Let's move on to Microsoft, and I think we should start off with Wombat and I. Yeah. Our interview with Stephen Toulouse, head of policy and enforcement for Xbox Live. Here we go. All right, today we are joined by Stephen Toulouse, who is the head of policy and enforcement for Xbox Live. I got an email from Major Nelson yesterday, and he wanted us to have Stephen come on and talk about the Wombat situation.
A situation? It was a whole situation?
I don't know. The Wombat incident?
Are we talking about the smell, or are we talking...
There's a lot of situations, actually. Wait, I'm going to look up. It says, no, it wasn't a situation. It said he wanted to have Stephen to come on to discuss what went down with Wombat.
Yes, I did. And so I listened to I think it was the previous cast that you guys...
Two shows ago.
Two shows ago, okay. And heard the incidences of behavior that Wombat had gone through. And so I thought it might be good to sort of talk a little bit about what my team does and how we work to try and punish bad behavior on Xbox Live. I should apologize in advance, Wombat, because usually when we put someone in the spotlight, one of the things we tell them about is the potential for the experience that you had. And the reason for that is that right now with over 20 million people on the service, the law of large numbers says that even if a small amount of them are jerks, that could equate to a lot of people. So we usually try to...
Yeah, and
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, and even I said on that episode, the vast majority of comments were either very nice or just a offhanded hello. And that was the sampling that I provided, was relatively small.
Yeah, I think what you saw was a nice little slice, a small slice of just the overall community. It's such a large community now. That gamer spotlight can attract a lot of great people, new friends, whatever, and the occasional jerk. So I'm hoping I'm going to state this up front that you filed complaints on the bad guys.
I probably should have, but by the time, honestly, what I did was, because when this first started and I thought it was kind of funny, I started collecting them. What I didn't realize is that the messages were going to start coming in so fast that they literally would disappear within a day from the list, where I just didn't have time to catch up.
Yeah. Usually another piece of guidance we give to people who are in the spotlight is, hey, you may want to restrict your messages just to your friends for a short amount of time. So did you know that there was a setting to do that?
I did, and it got to, but there were, like I said, there was a handful of nice messages and people who just wanted to say hi, and for a few bad apples, I didn't want to necessarily deter other people from being nice.
Good point. Did you block the messages from the bad guys?
He didn't do anything. Look, Steven, he barely gets the Xbox on.
Oh. Well, okay, so
I know how to plug it in, and I can play a few games. But that's about all I got.
Great. So this is sort of an opportunity for me to sort of detail some of the tools that are available. So certainly, number one, that type of behavior is exactly why my team exists, to stop that type of behavior, to punish those bad guys. We certainly don't want anyone to think that hey, you're in the spotlight, and throw you to the wolves. That's certainly not the case at all. So there's a couple of different tools that we usually tell people about. This goes whether you're in the spotlight or not. You certainly have the ability to restrict your messages, who's sending you messages. And you can do that friends, or you can completely block, or you can just open it up to everybody. When you receive a bad message, we ask people to do two things. First, complain about it. If there's some type of nudity in a picture attached, if there's just foul language, if there's racism or homophobia or anything like that, file a complaint and then block further messages from that user, and then you won't receive anything more from that person. And so that way you both have the ability to tell us when we need to step in, and at the same time, you can control sort of your own experience when you're getting deluged with that. So that's one of the things that we want to educate people on is, number one, there are some tools you can use to protect yourself. But number two, my team exists to go after those guys and issue a corrective action if we need to. We have a variety of tools at our disposal to do that. Or in the worst case, which thankfully is fairly rare, invite them to no longer be our customer.
Right. That must. Yeah, I can imagine what has to happen for that. Let me intersperse this with a few questions because we have.
Oh, absolutely.
We told our listeners that you were coming on, and so they provide us with some questions. This one comes from actually super programmer John, who works on CAG. He was curious what you guys do when somebody has like a voice chat complaint. So not like a message, but let's say you're playing a round of Halo, and somebody is very not nice to you, very profane. I mean, you obviously don't have like a copy of the conversation.
Correct. So there's several ways that we handle what we call transient communication. And some I'm not going to talk about just because they're technological, they're on our back end. But I can say that number one, we look at complaints. So what my team does, basically every day is we look at all the complaints in the system. So for text and profile complaints, for instance, we look at every single one and we judge whether or not that complaint is accurate. Mm-hmm. For things like cheating and things like voice, we've got some things we do on the back end to try and establish correlation between two gamers. But also we have the ability to police the system actively. So we're actually out there in the system every day across the world. I have several dozen people across the world that are actually out there playing games every day looking for bad behavior as well. So we kind of do both an active policing and then an evidence review on our side. And then we take action. And the action that we take, if it's fairly innocuous, like for instance, you're playing a game and somebody blurts out a curse word because they just got sniped from across the map. Right. That's not something we're going to jump on and really. But if it's egregious, if it's racial or homophobic or something of that nature, we can do several things. We can suspend that person from the service. We can issue a communications ban so that they can't communicate with anyone. No one can hear them. All the way up to actually permanently banning them from the service.
So I guess you can, like you said, there's things that you can do to tell if that complaint is actually legitimate. I'm guessing you can tell if I report Wombat 5277 because he called me something very nasty during a game. I guess there's a way you may not be able to tell what he said to me, but you could tell probably at least that we played a game together.
There's a variety of things that, again, I'm not going to detail, but the rest of your question is, can I figure out if it's valid? Yes, I can figure out if it's valid.
I was going to say, I guess you can't say one way or another, but you are using the Xbox service to send that message. The same way that your cell phone provider can get your phone calls on your cell phone.
It's very similar.
There's probably a way for Xbox to get the message that you're sending over their service.
I mean, yeah.
Without being too specific, we get lots of data.
There's a lot of data. Okay, fair enough.
So I hope that answers. I think the point of that question was both how can you tell it's legitimate and what do you do?
Right.
And so that's sort of the answer. Yes, we have means of figuring that out, and yes, we can take action.
All right. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention specifically about the Wombat situation?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it's certainly not something we want to have happen to people where they're spotlighted for being a great community member or being really passionate about their platform, and then they feel like they got attacked and there's no recourse, there's nobody who wants to listen to their complaint or anything. I want to make it very, very clear that's why my team exists. As soon as I heard it, I'm like, uh-oh. We definitely need to make sure people understand that there are things you can do. And you can let us know about that, and that's why my team is here.
Gotcha. Wombat, did you have any? I mean, I have more questions. We have more questions to get to, but Wombat, was there anything you wanted to say regarding that, or have you said pretty much all there is to say?
Well, I mentioned it also last week that I didn't. The messages I got did not and do not reflect on your team, and I did mention you last week on the show, saying that we know how hard a job it is you have and how hard it is to do your job, and when guys like me don't actually do anything about it other than play it on the fake internet radio.
Right, you really did your job there, Wombat. Nice. You gave us a good bid for the show.
Yeah.
I think you had a line that made me chuckle at the end where you said something along the lines of "Stay classy, Xbox Live," and I think my response to that is actually it's kind of stay classy internet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're just a subset of the internet, and we all know that there's bad behavior on the internet as well. So it's not unique to us.
Last week's show, when we sort of reflected on that again, I had more time to think about it, and I said, really, it's nothing to do with Xbox Live per se. It's just anonymous people on the internet. Xbox Live happens to be, the largest network of online gaming where you can talk to people and interact with people. So, but it's basically the internet. And of course, there's a lot of jerk-offs on the internet, and, it's not an Xbox thing, it's an internet thing.
I'm a big believer in the Penny Arcade Gabe's. I think they sanitized it for the T-shirt. I think they now call it the Greater Internet Dickwad Theory.
Absolutely.
Where anonymity plus audience plus normal person equals,
Dickwad.
I agree with that. I think that's the reason I have a job.
Right. Well, here's a good segue. Did you see Penny Arcade yesterday? I think it was.
I did, as a matter of fact.
Okay, so in case our listeners didn't see it, Gabe was playing a round of Halo, and some guy sent him a very nasty message, which he posted on the front page of Penny Arcade. So my question to you, Stephen, is: obviously you see this. What happens to the guy who sends the message?
So, first of all, I reached out to Gabe and said, we typically frown on public shaming in that regard.
Right.
Because if you think about the audience of Penny Arcade, it becomes a force multiplier, and he may have inadvertently focused the ire of a community that really, really likes Tycho and Gabe, and now they may go harass this guy.
Right.
So I've asked that, if we're going to do that, let's blur the gamer tag out.
But he put it in the title of the article.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still up there. I'm looking right now.
Yeah, and the damage is done, right?
Right.
So what happens to an individual like that is that they are going to be issued a punishment commensurate to their history. So if they've never done anything bad before, the typical first issued punishment from the system is going to be a 1-day communication suspension, where they won't be able to do any voice or anything like that. All the way up to, if they've been really, really bad, it could be a 2-week service suspension where they can't even log into Xbox Live for 2 weeks. Or if they, if this is the however many times we've had to deal with this person, then they, again, could be permabanned just for sending that message, just because they've sent so many of them, or they've forced us to deal with them so much that now it becomes, hey, you're not listening, and you're not learning from the corrective actions that we're taking. So,
and you're costing us man hours. You're costing us money now, even after your $50 a year.
Yeah, in effect. So, so that individual, I can confirm, was did receive a punishment. We don't detail what the specific punishments are.
It's just funny that you got to be really careful, because you don't want to send it to somebody like Gabe.
It's funny. I saw it. I read them. Every new. Every day that they come out with a new strip. And so what I was waiting for with that one was, I think sometimes the news post can lag from the posting of the strip. And I figured, considering they had just done a really, really funny strip about how we try to keep abreast of current slang. I think you guys probably saw this. This was the Precog Minority Report thing.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, resulted in a spike of people putting Ham Doctor in their profiles, which I think is just hysterical.
Right.
But on the heels of that, I figured there was probably something in the post that was going to tie it back to that. So I was entertained.
I was banned from Xbox Live for, I think 48 hours.
You sent me, I remember. I think I remember when it happened. I think you had something in your profile. I don't remember what it was.
I had Konnichiwa bitches in my profile.
That's right.
And I think I spelled Konnichiwa wrong.
I think you did. I think
that's why you were banned.
That's why I got banned, for being stupid. Okay, let's do a few more questions here.
Sure.
Obi Ben wants to know if anyone has been banned from Xbox Live for life.
So there's several different types of suspensions and bans that we have. What we call a permaban is when we take the account and say, this account can never connect to Xbox Live again. And that can take two forms. That can take the form of their console, or that can take the form of a gamer tag. It's really hard, given how people can create new accounts, to say, oh yeah, I banned someone and they never, ever came back. So the short answer to the question is yes, there are such things as permanent bans.
But you can't you can't get their DNA code. So
exactly right. Exactly right. And to a certain extent, it's almost a case of once we permanently banned a gamer tag, if an individual wants to pay to rejoin Xbox Live, they're it's sort of okay. Well, if you're going to be well behaved, then you learned your lesson, and I wouldn't want to prevent that from happening. Gotcha.
Fully Squeezed wants to know, what was the strangest reason that you had to ban somebody?
Oh, what a great question. The strangest so all suspensions basically come from violations of our terms of use. So all the reasons you can be suspended are really kind of public. Right. Don't do this or don't do that. The strangest. Oh, well, this isn't a ban, but I actually had to I had to voice ban someone because they would not stop reciting the Declaration of Independence during a game.
That's pretty interesting.
Despite several warnings, it was Shadowrun, so team communications absolutely critical, and they were just repeatedly reciting the Declaration of Independence. So in effect, they were kind of monopolizing the voice channel.
They were freedom spanning.
It was weird. Yeah, exactly right. So that's a pretty weird reason to have to silence someone. I felt terrible doing it, but I gave him several warnings. I sent him several messages. I'm like, listen, I'm gonna have to stop you from doing this because you're disrupting the entire game for everybody. It was across several matches, and so I gave him a 1-day comm suspension.
All right. Seth Guy 45 wants to know if you can file a complaint on somebody for having a modded controller.
There's not a category for that. There's a category for cheating, which is what I would suggest you file that under.
Okay.
Modded controllers take a couple of different flavors. First and foremost, I should note that having turbo buttons in your controller is something we allow for licensed products. I think a couple of different controller manufacturers do have legitimate turbo button controllers on the market.
That's right. Hori makes one that's sold in Japan, I know.
Yeah.
Oh, they do make a turbo one? I didn't even know those were made.
Yeah, and so my suggestion is it's not always a modded controller. It could be a perfectly legitimate controller. And it's really up to the game developer to handle the input. The Xbox doesn't necessarily spend a lot of processor time trying to figure out whether the input it's receiving is legit or not. Its job is to make sure that the game gets that input. It's really up to the game to decide how it handles the input. So if it receives 30 presses of the A button in the space of 5 milliseconds, it's really up to the game to decide how to handle that. And some games handle it differently. For instance, you could spam Halo 3 all you want with swinging the gravity hammer, but the reality is the animation is what's going to limit you there.
Right.
So the game properly drops any extra requests on the floor while it's just doing the animation of you swinging the hammer. So games just handle it differently, and it's up to each game to handle, turbo input. And so I would say there, if you think it's being used from a cheating perspective, or the user is bragging about having a modded controller, you can certainly feel free to file a complaint under the cheating mechanism.
All right. Wombat, is there anything that we've missed? I mean, I think we've got all the questions pretty much. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I think... No, I want to thank him for coming on, and for the hard work he does every day to keep Xbox Live clean for all of us.
Well, it's not just me. I got a really great team of people who work for me, and you can communicate. I want to say something else to the listeners. You can communicate with me and my team via the Xbox.com suspensions forum. So you can come and talk to us and ask us follow-up questions if you want to.
How does one become a Xbox Live banhammer wielder?
I have a joke about that, right? Because you have to start with an interview, and during that interview, before you get very far, you've pretty much got to disclose the type of content and behavior that you might be subjecting someone to. So my joke about that is I used to wonder how you get new proctologists. And I think the answer is if you just show them what they're going to be dealing with and they show an aptitude for it and don't run screaming from the room, that's probably your person. It's just a very similar scenario. Once you start showing people the behavior and the things, and they take a look at the evolution of slang, or they take a look at what a word can be construed to mean, and they go, oh yeah, I can spot that and I can take care of it, and they don't run out of the room screaming, hey, you probably got a good enforcer.
I think Wombat would be good. I know he wants to be a proctologist. So.
We get weirdly enough. Does he really? Weirdly enough, we get a lot of volunteers. We really people want to do this, so I find that heartening.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Stephen, for joining us. And
no problem at all. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, we're back.
Woo!
And boy, are our arms tired. No, that's not right.
Well, that was interesting and informative.
Right. As Shipwreck pretends that he heard the interview.
I've heard it before, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's, well, whatever. People
I
want
bet
to
you
come
didn't
on.
know that Stephen Toulouse was Luke Skywalker's father.
Right.